And here we are. Welcome to the Two Half Squads, the one and only podcast dedicated 100% to the greatest game in the world.
Advanced Squad Leader.
I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
And we have very special guests with us tonight. All of our guests are special, but these guys are especially special.
Special.
It's Dave and Paul. Welcome, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks for
Great to be here.
The reason why we asked you on was because, why did we ask them on, Dave? I'm sure we had a good reason.
Well, as you can see behind me, if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're not, it is the 10th Mountain Pack.
Oh, there it is. Yep.
That is going to be our particular topic of this show and whatever else comes up.
Yeah. So tell us about this pack, guys, and where this came from and how this all came up, and about the 10th Mountain Division.
Yeah, so my dad served in World War II, and he was in the 10th Mountain Division. He was a ski jumper prior to enlisting in the Army, and one of the reasons he enlisted was because he thought he could join the 10th Mountain and go skiing. So that was his reason, and but I grew up in the 70s and early 80s in high school, and I started playing ASL then. And so I started asking him about his World War II service at that time, and he would not say anything about it at all. And so I knew very little when I was in high school about his war service and what he did. And it was only until recently, about 5 years ago, that he opened up more about his World War II service and started telling me stories. And so I said, well, I play this weird game, and we have a pretty good club in Kansas City, and we'd love to do a pack, a set of scenarios around the 10th Mountain Division. And he thought that was a great idea. And so he shared with me some pictures and some of the books that he was very active in the 10th Mountain Division alumni, I guess that'd be the right term. And they would gather it in Colorado on occasion. And they had a pretty good group in Iowa where I grew up. But so I got to know more about the 10th Mountain Division and particular about the regiment and the division that he served in. And so he was basically an off-board observer in ASL. So he would move forward and scout out enemy positions and call in artillery and look for Germans and pillboxes and things like that. Especially the mountains of Italy is where they were engaged. So he kind of came late to 10th Mountain Division, so he wasn't involved in the early operations of the division, like the Kiska situation, or even earlier in Italy. But so he kind of showed up in Italy around in the late 1944. He was there till the end of the war.
And when did the 10th Mountain Division form? Do you know? And where was it?
It formed in 1943.
Yes.
And so my dad joined in 42 and was quickly ushered to, they trained in Leadville, Colorado.
43, yeah.
And so he thought that was great. He got to be in the mountains. And then I think they turned the mountain division into a light infantry division, and then moved them all to Texas, and he hated that. And then they got shipped overseas. And then when the war ended, they brought him back to the States, and he was actually on a boat to Japan to participate in the invasion of Japan. But then the bomb dropped and they turned their boats around. So,
because that's a typical good idea by the Army to send a mountain division to a jungle environment. That's U.S. Army at its best. But they were, one thing about the 10th Mountain is they were some of the best trained troops. They trained for several years, and these guys were most of them were elite athletes. and recruited from everything from Olympians down, and including Dave's dad. And so these guys were no slouches. These guys were like cream of the crop dudes. And so it would be no surprise that they would want that kind of unit over there to do whatever they needed to do over there.
Not that my dad was an Olympic athlete or anything. He was 5'6" and weighed 120 pounds going into the Army.
Pretty typical
And,
in those days, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he, although he says he was one of the shortest guys in his regiment. So.
And did they deploy the mountain division mostly by parachute?
No, they over on boats, and
Oh man!
the funny thing was, they did all this training with skis, and then they showed up in Italy in December, and they didn't have skis with them because they forgot them. And then they eventually got skis, but then it was like March and they didn't need them anymore. So the only time my dad used skis when he was in Italy was when the war had ended and they went over the Swiss Alps to go skiing. So they just went recreational skiing.
Wow.
Some of the scout guys, the recon dudes, they scrounged up skis
Right.
from locals and stuff.
Right.
And used them, but they utilize their mountain training
All the time. Yeah.
Climbing, and you have several accounts of pretty amazing climbs they did on near sheer cliffs and stuff.
So the one thing about the pack is a lot of the 10th Mountain engagements were at night. So a lot of our scenarios are night driven. So not the most favorite thing to do for ASL players, but
yeah. So we've got, so they're moderately big. Some of them are moderately big at night with snow in the mountains. And so with some off-board artillery. So that's pretty crazy. But that's what they did. That's what they did with a lot of their attacks.
Yeah, you couldn't do the pack without doing those kinds of things. And I took a look at the scenarios that are the 4-parters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, you have a nice historical right up here that you did a great job of covering a lot of historical information in a very short space. Who wrote that up?
I wrote it up, but I wrote it up based on a number of different sources, and then we did have Dave's dad look it over, so I was pleased. He said it sounded pretty accurate, so that was good.
And he's like 90 something. Is he with us?
so my dad turned 100 in December, and so we're going to debut our pack at our March Madness tournament in March. And he was so excited to come to that tournament, but he fell ill, and he kind of early March, and then he passed away on March 21st. So
yeah, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, very sorry to hear that.
yeah, well, he lived a long, rich life. No complaints. And but one thing he did say, and I talked to him, I went over when we were doing the tournament, like on March 9th, 18th or something like that. I went over to where he was staying, and he said, "I'm so sorry I can't make it over to your tournament. I really wanted to come and see all you people that play this." He always called it a stupid game, but
well, we would have been jazzed to see him. That's the kind of
no question about
you guys
that.
know.
Yeah.
When we meet people like that, we're totally jazzed.
Yeah.
So yeah, Paul and I wrote the inside the front cover, and a lot of that is about my dad. And so it was kind of fun to include a couple pictures of him. And then Paul wrote mostly all the historical stuff on the 4-part piece. And then we included a bunch of little facts in the back cover about the 10th Mountain Division, of which one that they started many of the ski resorts in the United States. And my dad was instrumental in starting one in in all places, Dubuque, Iowa, where they had a little tiny ski hill and just a little tiny ski club. But two members from the 10th Mountain Division were part of that ski club, and they were former ski jumpers. And in fact, going through my dad's stuff, I found newspaper clippings of him ski jumping when he was 13 and 15 years old, and getting in first and third place on local ski jump stuff. And so he was a skier his whole life. In fact, after he retired in 1986, he taught skiing for the next 40 years at the ski hill that he helped start in Dubuque,
Wow.
Iowa. So
Wow. That is fantastic.
yeah.
This page had the historical write-up. I did read those two things. I didn't get to the back page yet.
Yep. So one big when we normally do packs for March Madness, a lot of them, not every one of them, but a lot of them are kind of not a hodgepodge, but a slew of different scenarios and different settings, and some
Even different theaters. Yeah.
Right? And so this one for us, when Dave suggested it a couple of years ago now, it just clicked for me because I do a lot of the historical checking for the intro and the aftermath stuff. And for me to be able to just zero in on one unit and maybe the guys they were fighting against, that was awesome, because then I could just drill way down into that historical detail. And so a lot of these details you see in the write-ups of the scenarios and the pack, those things are highly accurate. In fact, I got the German units, the 232nd Infantry Division. Yep, I got their write-up for their campaign in Italy too. So I had that, and I'm not a great reader of German, but I can get the gist of it and then do some translating. But it's really that was really helpful and really awesome to be able to do that.
Yeah. So what were your sources did you go to for looking for this?
Well, we had a handful of books that we started with.
So the 10th Mountain Division is fairly well not only supported, but have lots of stories, first-person accounts of the 10th Mountain Division from the very formation to their engagements in World War II. And so there were several books that we looked at there, and kind of cross-referenced them as far as how they told the story, especially the assault on Mount Belvedere and that whole mini campaign that's included in the pack.
Right. So we took a lot of the books, and then as I normally do is I just start surfing the net, and just with some digging, you can find. I found each one of the regiments has an historical write-up of the main portion of that Operation Encore section sequence, and so there's quite a bunch of detail in each one of those, and so those were written up by the regimental historians soon after the end of the war, and then there's multiple sites that have other specific articles of individual accounts, like Dave was just saying, and so I pulled all that stuff together and just collated and synergized it all, and saw where the overlaps were. There were the accounts supported each other. There really wasn't anything weren't been any big discrepancies between the accounts or anything, which I thought was pretty good. Some of the follow-on, some of the books and so on, they're really, you can consider them secondary sources because they pull a lot from these original write-ups. And so I found everything from, if you do some digging, you can found everything from every soldier that was in the 10th Mountain, the roster, every guy that was in the unit during World War II, including Dave's dad. I confirmed that he was in the unit he said he was in. So that was
Like father was leading this double life and
right. I don't know who that guy was. Yeah, no, he was spot on. And it was, so, and then we were pulling pictures, and you can find all sorts of pictures. Sometimes I'm kind of wondering sometimes if where we pull the pictures from. Some of them were public, but a lot of, and then we pulled some of these pictures, and we have a picture of a guy in a Jeep on one of the scenarios.
Right.
And
yeah, one of the stories my dad told was when he looked at the pictures and looked at all the scenarios, he said, one day I gave this ride to this guy up the mountain in a Jeep, and we overlooked this mountain. I bet that's me in that Jeep.
So we were gonna, yeah, so we told everybody that was a
picture.
I don't,
even if it wasn't.
And we do have a picture of my dad outside of a igloo, but we're pretty sure that was taken in Colorado. But we're saying that it could be on the side of the mountain in Italy.
nobody will know. Yeah, go ahead and say that. Nobody will know the difference. That's fine.
Yeah, so it was fun. And then they fought primarily against, for a big chunk of the Operation Encore section. So a lot of our scenarios actually are slightly before and after that, against the same division, but they also fought a little bit against the 4th Parachute Division as well. There's kind of an overlapping and swapping of units in the Gothic line there during that period. But yeah, it was a tough attack. This Belvedere they attacked during this Operation Encore, that had been attacked several times over the previous year, previous half year by American units, and they had got onto the hill, but then been repulsed. And but the 10th Mountain got up there and held on to it.
Well, they scaled the mountain at night.
They did.
yeah.
And surprised the forces at that night and in the early morning, and were able to take the positions.
Now, do you have that scaling in one of the 4 parts
Yes.
of the?
Yeah,
It's not one of the 4 parts. It's one of the lead-in ones.
yeah, it's the second or third scenario.
Riva Ridge is, we have some skis and patrolling the Gothic line, which is the first one. And then the scaling up that cliff is the Riva Ridge scenario where they're yes, that one right there. Yep, that one.
With the one with the picture of the Jeep, yeah.
Yes, that's the
That is correct.
I don't see a Jeep.
Yeah, and that's the cliff they went up. So, or the pretty sheer faces.
In the
And they
background.
had scouted that over a period of a week or two, kind of surreptitiously at night. And then they had staked out several routes, and then they went up there that night, scaled them all up there, and surprised them in the morning.
Yeah, is that the commando rule that gives them scaling ability? I forget.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah. Well, that helps, right? You don't have to be a commando to scale, but it helps them not fall, which is always a good thing. Not to.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's
indeed.
been a really long time since I've climbed an ASL, so it would
I
probably.
know, right? Well, us too. So we have to read through those rules. Yes.
So the introductory scenarios, were there 2 of those that then lead into the?
Well, we did a kind of a patrolling the Gothic line, which was just so the 10th Mountain arrived in this valley, and they did a lot of scouting up and down the valley, and so we found a few incidences where they were just trying to suss out German positions, and so this one, the patrolling the Gothic line, is the one that I did, and just a sense of, we're out on a ski patrol and we're finding, pillboxes and trenches and maybe a few Germans, and you're trying to get, so the Americans have to ski in, go across a couple bridges and ski out without taking major losses, and try to discover things, right? So it's kind of an interesting little scenario where you're not necessarily trying to eliminate everybody, You're just trying to survive and scout out positions.
Right, it's a short, tight one with, it's got a small number of units on the American side, but the skis allow you to zip around that board. It's amazing how
Right.
fast they make you go.
So skiing downhill is kind of fun in ASL.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you're going like 12 hexes.
Right.
The first time I was doing that, it must have been with the Finns or Russians, I think, on some early
Right.
scenarios, right?
Right.
And we're like, oh, it's downhill with skis. I can't wait to do this.
I thought I'd see some skiing in that Sisu movie, but that's more about blowing up Germans and stuff.
So then,
Okay, so then the second one is that Reaver Ridge one where they have to get up on, that's where they scaled it at night. And they essentially, the Germans were actually in the middle of doing a force replacement, and they just got completely surprised. And the Americans got up there and took over the German positions before they really realized what was going on.
But that one also has a lot of kind of scouting and finding the German positions and
Yes.
things like that as well. So,
Right.
and then the launches into the four-parter where they don't have to be played in sequence, but there are certain rules, and Paul can talk more about that, that link the scenarios together.
Yeah.
So,
Right, they're all part of Operation, the four-part is called Operation Encore. That was the name of the operation, where they attacked the Mount Belvedere to Mount Della Torraccio ridgeline. Belvedere was the highest point, but there were several mountains, hilltops along there from kind of southwest to northeast, sort of path of 3 or 4 hills there. And so they captured Mount Reaver Ridge the night before, and they removed the observation posts and firing positions from the Germans. That was Reaver Ridge was to the south of Mount Belvedere, and it allowed the Germans to interdict units that were moving up Mount Belvedere. So they took that position, and then the next night they attacked onto Mount Belvedere as a big operation, a 2-regimental attack, and then followed by a 3rd regiment.
and then what I've noticed on them is that, so Jeff didn't get to see this because I was looking at these scenarios. The board's 80-81, and then they go into a little bit of 82-83.
That's
And
right.
Scenario is on 82-83, and then they
right.
their way over on the same boards to the next
Right.
more boards at the end. I thought, like,
That's right.
this is like a scrolling
It is.
It is. Yeah.
way across all the way.
Yep,
Very
that's right.
So it was actually really cool when Paul and I were playtesting it, because we have a game table here at the place where I work, and we were just able to kind of keep that up for a number of what seemed like months where we play tested through all that. It's because, you're play testing at, you're doing night, and you have off-board artillery, and you're trying to figure all this stuff out. And so it takes a while, and then you have like, two little big groups of Americans. So you have like 24 squads on a side or something like that. So it's a big scenario.
Right, so the boards move along, and it just turned out that the length of the boards, the 82, 81, 80, 82 and 83, and then 5A at the end, they kind of match the length of that ridge line. And so they just flow along there, and the Americans they take the ridge line, the hill on the left, and then they take the hills in the middle, and then they go take the hills on the end, and then they have to defend against the German counterattack that happened on that hill on the end, on the right, which happened to be some elite German mountain troops coming back at them.
Their own mountain troops, right?
So it was kind of it just was kind of made to be hooked together. It was kind of the operation.
It's really good. And then, so some of this, what's going on with the special rules, obviously, if you win part 1, there's things you gain, heat of battle. And then if you win by so many victory points,
Yeah,
You can gain-
right. So the way we connected them together is I mean, you can play them individually, but if you play them together, then after each scenario, you look at the losses and how well each side did, right, along there. And then so like the Germans, depending on how many casualties they inflicted on the Americans, they can battle harden some guys. Depending on how many losses they took, they may lose a small number of forces from the force pool in the next scenario, and then et cetera. And then so that's on both sides of the Americans and the Germans. Now, we did, if the units, depending on when the scenarios flipped to kind of a different unit that was participating, we lowered the effects because the effects wouldn't be as, like if you lost units in one unit, that wouldn't be impacting the different unit that was in the next scenario so much.
Yeah, if you lost some conscript Germans, not such a big deal.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
I was kind of wondering about that too, because you wanted to keep it, you want to reward the winner, but you got to keep it all pretty well.
Yeah, right, because we wanted them to be able to be played without this sequence, so we didn't want to degrade the force pool very significantly in between. And then you track for the whole scenario down at the bottom on that page, you track the victory conditions over that four sequence of scenarios, and then whoever has the most victory points at the end, campaign victory points, right there, wins. And there's kind of some common special rules on that page that are common across all the scenarios. And those were put into place to represent, well, there were some playtesting things on the minefields and so on. But it also represented the high training and mountain operations that the 10th Mountain had. So instead of spending a full extra movement point to go uphill, they only spent a half in snow. They had a lot of experience with pack mules. So we gave them a little bit of a benefit and this is one of those other rules that we hardly ever use, like how many times do you animal pack a 50 cal machine gun? Not very often. So we had those, but so it turns out when you animal pack it at night, it doubles the time to unload it. It's kind of a hassle. So we alleviated that, took care of that. These rules that when you start reading chapter G, section 11, or section 10, it gets, you have to read them carefully.
So, and some of those special rules find their way into the other scenarios as well, because we wanted to bring that, especially the 10th Mountain Division moving uphill in the snow and things like that, ground snow, that's kind of across the board in all of the scenarios. So those rules are referenced in the other scenarios as well.
And then because we have a lot of OBA, we enforce, essentially it's that plebe OBA thing where you never lose a battery. If we put that no battery, no permanent loss SSR in place, then when you draw a red card, if you draw a second red card, you don't lose battery access, you just put another red card in the pile. And
so there was one play test where I actually had more red cards in my deck than the black cards.
Yeah, that was great. Turns out the Americans did okay in that.
Yeah, and that was just a big topic on the annual, or is it journals now? From MMP, right? They had Spilkey and talk about it.
Yeah,
And, yeah. Because it seems like we all kind of can see the folly of having an OBA that never goes off. But
well, especially those scenarios where that they were that in the play test they were counting on it, and it just when you lose it, it's a killer. It's just too much. So then at the end, we have these last two scenarios.
Yeah. So our friend Scott Mullins, Grumble Jones, he did a scenario, Metal for G Company. So there's so that scenario there that was done by him a while ago, but we included it, or we did some updating to it. We play tested it more. A lot of Grumble Jones scenarios, he just puts them out there and lets them go. He doesn't do a lot of play testing, but we play tested that one a lot. And these shorter scenarios were probably some of the favorites of our club because they got play tested all the time, where the bigger ones, it was usually Paul and I doing them.
Well, it's hard to get someone to play a 9-turn night scenario with 20, 30 squads inside.
And then there was just a short engagement at the end that Dan Best did, Task Force Derby, where the Americans are attacking an airfield, and there's actually some Germans that are going through the lines trying to get away. And so it's got some interesting SSRs and it's interesting victory conditions on that scenario.
Yeah, so that's a fun one because the Americans are attacking this airfield where the Germans are defending it. But then as the Americans go on, here comes some Germans behind them trying to get off the board, go through the Americans to get off the board. It's kind of a fun scenario. And we have a handful of other scenarios that we just ran out of playtest oomph and will to continue from our group here. But we have a handful of other scenarios that the 10th Mountain. They did one more kind of large engagement at the end that was on the edge of a lake.
Lake Garda.
Lake Garda. So they go up the side of a lake to get into a town at the end, and that I think we can do a couple scenarios off of in the future pack.
I've been to
Kind of a fun one. They use ducks to get her to bypass the road along the lake goes through a bunch of tunnels, and they use some ducks on the lake to go bypass the little blockades the Germans had.
And that's
The Germans, I think, had a couple 88s on the other side of the lake, and they just like shooting randomly into
Fun scenario.
into the tunnels.
And Jeff said you've been there to the lake.
Yeah, I've been to Lake Garda. I went to a
Oh,
tennis.
you have? Okay, cool.
Yeah, very beautiful, huge lake, long lake.
Did you go through the tunnels?
Yeah, lots of tunnels, lots of switchbacks. The driving was terrifying for somebody like who comes from Illinois, where all our driving is two-dimensional. And then getting to Italy with all the mountains and stuff, it was really something. But the lake region was just absolutely beautiful.
My dad always said it was a beautiful country, and if he'd love to go back to visit. He never did, and he said it was great being there, except for the war. Except for that part. This is a beautiful country.
So will we see those other scenarios pop up somewhere? The ones that didn't make it into the pack, will they?
Oh yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I've already got them. This is what happens to me. I get on a roll, and so that we probably have. Well, I have those two half designed, and then for that Lake Garda sequence, and then we have probably at least a dozen more in various stages of near completion, ready for the next set of packs, not including 8 or 10 that's going to be in our Korean War pack.
Yeah,
So we have quite a few in the hopper.
Korean War pack coming out. Are those going to be really large or not?
Yeah, 8 or 10 scenarios.
But not
large scenarios.
About
half and half, I think.
Yeah. Some of them aren't that big.
Some of it, we try to. I mean, I always try to push that we have at least a couple, tournament size scenarios in our packs.
Mm-hmm.
One, so that we can include them in our tournament, but also they get more playings than, and people have a tendency then to want to buy our pack.
Right.
So,
and we've got some other nationalities in one.
Right.
One of the scenarios has the Philippine Army fighting in Korea. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, and then there's that World War I thing is just still in the works.
Yeah.
Yes, we still have that planned. The rules are semi-stable. We just need to start play testing. We've been telling each other we're saving money to do a print run of the counters. I think that's still the plan.
Yep.
And we'll put out a British-German pack. Hopefully, I don't know. We always say a date, then we never make it. So we're not saying dates anymore. Yeah, our original date was 2014. Then the next day, because it was a 100-year anniversary. Then the next date was 2018. Then the next date was, well, whenever we get it. But we have done a lot of work on that. It is an extensive amount of work. And that is, at some point, we're going to get it out.
And we're used to waiting, of course, but is that's going to have vehicles too and counters and everything?
Oh, yes, that.
Yeah.
If you can think of well, not every World War I vehicle, but every military type vehicle, AFVs especially. And then they had tons of different weapons, everything from large grenade launching catapults to these pineapple looking mortars the British had early to, yes. So it's going to have tons of different interesting weapons. And we've done research on American weapons and vehicles, British, German, Austro-Hungarian, Russian, Turk, Ottomans, and Italians. So, and French, sorry, can't forget.
Cover the major.
Amazing.
Yeah, well, the French, so I worked for the Army and we had some French guys come over to, turns out I do wargaming at work, which is kind of fun. So we brought there were some French guys, officers and civilians over, and we took them to the Kansas City has the National World War I Museum. And we took them down there for that. And that was an interesting discussion with them. But in my opinion, after doing all that research, and I have probably 100 books on World War I, the French won that war. If it hadn't been for the French, those guys took it on the chin, and now the Americans, we came in at the end and really helped finish it off. But the French, man, they were studly in that.
Yeah, because being American, we always learned that. Well, of course, we came in and had to save Europe again.
Yeah, we saved you, and we kind of sort of did. But man, the French and the British as well, but the French really.
Were the Germans running out of steam on that last peace offensive a little bit even before the Americans started flooding in? Also, or?
Yeah, they were. They had figured out ways with their tactics and their upgraded weapon systems, where essentially they were using World War II tactics, and they were able to penetrate the trenches, but it was just too little, too late for them.
Yeah,
and the Americans were coming in. The French were no dummies either, and so and the British, and so it was just too little, too late for them. I mean, they were almost there, but it wasn't enough, and the Germans were exhausted too.
yeah.
I mean, that war took a toll on those dudes as well.
Yeah,
and they just could not sustain any long-term combat there in late 1918.
Yeah, even though it was like the stab in the back thing, it's sure at home too, the German people were starving and everything.
Oh, terrible. Yeah.
Never realized, when you're just studying the battles, you're never aware of, oh my gosh, this thing was just horrendous all the way around.
Yeah. And we think about the like PTSD, which is terrible from the guys that have been in counterinsurgency stuff for the past 20 years. Think about those dudes that had to sit inside those bunkers and get bombarded for a week and a half and then crawl out of that bunker and get up on a machine gun. It's like their brain, I don't know how they did it. Their brains were, I don't know how they did it. Amazing.
And the vehicles, I built a lot of models of World War II stuff and then played ASL, which really got me inspired to learn more about the war. And then I started teaching 8th grade, and I had to start boning up on World War I and didn't want to teach too many misconceptions,
Right.
And then I built model kits to show the kids to help make the classroom come alive a little. And so I recognized that the British one, right?
Yep.
And
Mark IV, yep.
Yeah, and then everything else, I was looking at these things going, what the heck is this thing? I got to build, learn about this. I can tell the kids, you fit like 10 crew in this thing, and all kinds
there were.
Yeah, so it was exciting. It was like learning something new. Of course, you teach the big picture, the grand strategy and all that, and the politics of it and the cause and effects. But I always wanted to sneak in all that weird stuff with the weaponry and the odd looking tanks, kind of keep everyone's interest at different levels. So I'm interested to see what I can learn more about the vehicles.
Yeah, so I've done so I'm a operations analyst at work. So that means I do math, stuff. That's my job. So I've taken a lot of the data from the ASL, the World War II ASL stuff, and I built charts and so on that say compare real world armor thickness and gun barrel length and speed and so on to the ASL numbers. And then I built these charts and tables, and then I looked at the World War I versions and scaled the armor factors and stuff to match that. The ASL guys, I'm not sure they did that chart table thing, but they did a good job. I mean, it's pretty linear how well they did that. That like real world armor goes up by this much, and the armor factor goes up by 1 or 2 values. Really well done by them. It wasn't. Once I got the charts built, it wasn't that hard to see the where to take the values, but it's kind of fun doing that.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And then club wise, how are things? You said, I think you had some newer, younger players or play testers.
Yeah, so it's been nice to have some new players join our club, and some folks who had played before, but taking a break and come back to it. But some people just picking it up for the first time. And so a lot of starter kit stuff, but then we introduce them to full ASL, and they've been pretty active. They've come to our tournament in March. And so that's been a good boost. So I'm the director of a retreat center, and we have a game, we have a little conference room, which is where we're meeting right now. And it's about 8 or 6 tables or so. So we can have about 10 to 12 people here and not feel too crowded. And that's been really good. So we average, though, about 6 to 8 people on a game day. We meet monthly. So don't quite fill it, but we have filled it on occasion.
So, a couple of the guys are young, 30s, 20s.
Yeah, 30.
So that's good.
Yep.
Yeah, that is.
They're not all like us, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Every time you do an interview, I'm like, oh no, it's more old guys like me.
More old white guys.
Yeah. Right.
Wait, all 4 of us have a
with the
beard.
We look more
We
distinguished.
had one of our a guy that he hasn't been coming for a while, but he would bring his daughters, and one of his daughters, she would play starter kit or ASL, and she was I don't know, 10 years old, 8 years old.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
She had a king tiger, but she refused to call it a king tiger. She called it a queen tiger. But yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I wonder where the younger guys are coming from when they come in, how they find it.
Well, there's a guy puts on.
So there's a historical game group here in Kansas City, and they've had different iterations of their group where they do some model wargaming. They also do some like Napoleonics and things like that. So one of our friends, Scott Martin, is very involved in some of that branch of that group. And so he's started doing a historical game fest every year, like in August. And so we've been invited to come to that and do a mini ASL tournament. And so we pick up a few people from that every year, because they just are there to do something else. And they come by and they say, well, can I just play a game? And we said, sure. So we set it up for them, and they may have never played ASL before, but kind of walk them through, how it works and get them a starter kit. And usually Dan is very good. Dan Best is part of our main group here, and he's very good about giving away things, prizes and stuff. So if there's a new player that shows up, they usually go home with a starter kit or a rule book or something like that. So,
Wonderful.
yeah.
I hope hopefully that will inspire other groups to do likewise. It seems like there's an uptick in players.
Yeah, and so we've also, because we're a nonprofit for our club, we have gained some donations of people either when they pass away or when they don't want to play anymore. We've gotten their kit. So we have at least 3 kits here in our office here at Hollis Renewal Center.
And we're talking like a lot of counters.
Yeah.
Maps and stuff.
So our club doesn't have to bring things to play a game, right? So they just show up, and we've got all the maps here. We've got all the counters, and unless there's something strange with a particular, third-party group that they want to play or something like that, that we've got everything here. So
Wonderful.
Yeah.
How does somebody get the mountain pack?
yeah, so it is available at our website. So Kansas City ASL .com. I think that's right. And is also available digitally through the Scenario Archive folks in Great Britain. So
Okay. Oh, wonderful.
if you want to just download it digitally, it's the same price, I think, on Dave Ramsey's site as it is ours, but so it's like $16, and we pay for shipping. And then it's also available through some of the game stores, online game stores like Gamers Armory, Ritter Krieg, Alex Key's
Oh, yeah.
website.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
He's a good guy. I don't know.
Yeah, he supports our March Madness tournament every year with some prizes and stuff. So
Yeah, wonderful. Well, we'll be sure to include some links on this.
yeah, make sure I got that link right.
So I think I'd like to, so we have a lot of play testers. There's a list of these play testers on the back cover of the front of the pack, but you can see a lot of the ones that do a lot of it is Randy Church, James True, Nathan Wegener, those guys, and Tom Meyer. And so those guys are like guys that do a lot of the play testing for us, but each one of those guys we really appreciate those guys. It's a lot of work. Any people that have put out a pack where you count on a group of people that don't always want to play a play test scenario, but we lean on those guys a lot, and we're so appreciative of their support.
Yeah, that's really
Yep.
nice. It's a great community. There's no question about it. People really like to, for the most part, like to contribute. And to be able to tap into that is great. Got a good group there.
Well, we probably wrap it up, we suppose then.
Yeah, if there's anything else you want to mention before we go.
We really appreciate you guys
Yeah.
down there.
Yeah, thanks for supporting us and getting the word out about this pack, and we really appreciate it.
I think one thing I'd like to leave with you folks is there's not the World War II veterans are going fast,
Mhm.
and the Korean War ones too. So if you ever see one walking around or somewhere in the mall or whatever, it makes a difference when you say thank you to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and if there's any teachers out there, we used to write thank you cards each time we learned about a different.
Yes.
Typically, I'd ask kids if they had anyone in your family, and then that's alive and that would accept that. We'd love to get a card to them.
Yeah, we were very lucky to have Dave's dad as a resource in this project.
Yes, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, really nice. So,
Yeah.
all right,
Well, of
gentlemen.
course, there's one time I asked a kid about interviewing their parents, also having them come in and talk to the classes if they were a veteran. And the one kid goes, "Well, yeah, my grandpa was in World War I." I said, "No, I don't think so. I think you're talking World War II." And he said, "No, World War I think." And then it turns out he was in World War I. I said, "You got to be kidding me." This was long ago, but I said, we should get him to come in and have him talk to the kids. And he said, well, I don't know, Mr. Kleinschmidt. He hates kids and he swears a lot. I said, oh, yeah, okay.
Oh my gosh.
Too bad.
So, all right, we'll sign off then. Thank you guys so much.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you.
See
As
you.
we always say, should we try it together?
Yeah.
Remember to roll low.
And rally well.
But now
not when
you're playing
playing
us.
us. Yeah.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.